See, we need to go back to this fundamental thought pattern and what makes us different, right? In such a way that no matter how machine progresses, even if they try to reach a singularity, they can never replace us as it is. For us to do that, we need to go back and step backward and say, oh, how are we unique? In what way are we different, is it? And this brings me to my third segment concerning the human being in the context of society. What is the essence, the true essence of humankind? I call this segment the Homo Sociologicus, as I like to believe that we are more than just economic agent, where we find work as a definition of our worth, or life is more than just living a materially blessed life. You see, we are relational creatures that live and thrive in society and community. Right? We cannot live as an island by ourselves. We are made as relational beings. And I think this is the most definitive part of us as being humans, is it? All right, that we are relational. Is it? In the world of sociology, there is a basic branch that hails that an individual actually is the only reality. Right? Individual is the only reality. That means individual basically lives and their actions, their free will, their activities, and their interpretations of the world define so-called society. Right? Under those circumstances, you realize that man is therefore supreme to a certain extent. No machines will be able to replace human beings if you take it from that perspective. But we know that that is not necessarily the truth, because we know that human beings live in society and community. There is, much as we have our individual free will, our actions and our subjective interpretation, but yet we live within the social norm. We relate to each other as human beings as it is. We need to live harmoniously together to create this relationship. The interrelationship between society and individuals do suggest that we are relational creatures. And this is what will define us in terms of our humanity. What do we need to do? We need to go back and understand what is humankind. May I suggest that I would like to give you some of these thoughts concerning our humanness as it is. I like to believe that humans are more than just economic agents. Right? It's more than just us having a job, feeding our family, coming to work, and defining ourselves by our social status in terms of I'm a CEO, I'm an accountant, I am a politician, as it is. I like to believe that humans are more than just living for themselves alone. Right? That all of us don't just live for myself as it is. I like to believe we live in relations to our family, in relations to our community. That means I can never be truly happy if the world around me or the relationships around me collapses, right? And I can't share my joy with someone else. I don't think my joy will ever be complete for that matter. I like to believe that humans are individuals and they are also simultaneously embedded in society. That means there is an individual responsibility, there's also that community responsibility. And that is what will define us. I often have this wild idea. If I put two iPhones together with Siri and let them talk to each other, what will they say?
Let's find out.
Yes, they will just get I don't know when the conversation will stop. But you know that when you put two human beings together, technically speaking, they go on and on and on forever and ever, talk about anything under the sun. That's because they're relational.
That might be
an iPhone as it is.
Either heaven or nightmare for some people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I like to believe humans also have a notion of ontology. That means the notion of being rather than just existing. I want to know why am I here. I want to know who am I. I want to know what is my purpose in living as it is. And to think about it from a human perspective, I'd like to suggest that humans struggles with the same fundamental questions throughout mankind. Namely, they ask, who am I? Why am I here? Is there more than just eating, working, sleeping, and breathing? And maybe at some point in time, man will ask the question, where, on what legs, when my days on earth are done? I like to believe these are fundamental questions that exist throughout ages as it is. And I would like to encourage us by saying that I think humanities are really, as humans, we are really unique. So let us look at it from the work perspective. Human skills, how are we different from machines? How can we ever be much better than machines? I can think of the fact that human beings, our individual skills, we are creative. We have originality and initiative. We have the ability to do critical thinking. And relational-wise, we can persuade. We can negotiate, right? We have the attention to detail, resilience, flexibility, and the ability to solve complex problems, particularly in areas that we have never been before, right? We have emotional intelligence too. By looking at a person's facial expression, we know when to shut up as it is, right? We have leadership. We have the ability to influence others. And I like to believe, maybe many of us, our hearts or our hearts, we are very service-oriented. We cater to the emotional feelings of our fellow beings as it is. And human skills on a society basis, right? We have the ability to care, to love, to encourage. What defines us as humanity in a society is that we have the ability to show kindness. We are generally like to believe we are peacemaker, we are tolerant. And one of the most important attributes about a relationship is we have the ability to forgive. And don't forget too, in a community where we are artistics, we can create something out of nothing in that sense through artistic design. Also, we have a sense of justice, equity, righteousness, a wisdom in discernment, and we learn and are able to coexist in diversity, right? Look at the community or multiracial like Singapore. What makes us uniquely different is the fact we are able to exist religiously and racially harmoniously, which is not necessarily something that to be taken for granted as it is. And I like to believe, particularly in the face of COVID-19, the human being and the human race and the society as a whole, we are resilient in the face of adversities. That is what defines us as human beings. And this is always my encouragement. And with this, I think it brings me to how can we then regain our humanity in a technologically driven world? I'd like to suggest 4 things for us to think about. Firstly, may I encourage us to think about the fact that we are all uniquely made, right? See, human skills in both work and society can never be easily mimicked by technology or machines. You and I are wonderfully made as it is, right? I like to just use a passage in the Bible that says, Psalms 139, verse 13 to 15, that says, "For you, a higher God, a God that formed my inward parts, you wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the depths of earth." You see, to teach a robot to walk, it took scientists a long time. You look at the baby, the moment they walk, they stumble, they walk. Within 2-3 hours, they will learn how to walk in a gentle manner. Who could have made a human being so wonderful? See? It cannot be by a freak nature for that matter. See? So that's the first point, uniquely made. Secondly, there's a purpose in living. Humans are curious about existence and meaning of life. They are ontologically made. That means they are made in such a way that they will always quest for purpose and meaning in life. Right? I give you a verse that's in Psalms 8:3-5 that says, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon, the stars, which you have ordained, what is man that you take thought of him, and the son of man that you care for him? Yet you made him a little lower than God, and you crown him with glory and majesty." Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we are. We are meant to live as kings and princes because we are so-called the steward, the viceroys, the people that looks after this earth as it is, because God has given it to us. The third thing is our ability to relate. Humans are relational creatures. How is it expressed? And I like to believe the beauty of the 10 Commandments. The ants, The machines can never do this. The beauty of Ten Commandments tells us, honor your father and your mother. Right? Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. You shall not murder. Right? You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. See, we are made to be relational, because if we violate these rules that governs our relationship with our parents, with our neighbors, we will be at war not only with ourselves, but with the rest of the world as it is. We are created relational. And the last part of it, I always like to believe, is that we are curiously spiritual. Humans are made with a God vacuum-shaped heart, which will never rest until it is filled. Psalms 42, 1-2 says, as the deer pants for the water brooks, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the longing God. When shall I come and appear before God? Last year I was at Stonehenge, right, in UK as it is. And when I read the history of Stonehenge, it was to me fascinating, because one school of thought that was date back 3,000 years. And now school of thought is date back 10,000 years into the Mesolithic age as it is. What makes me so curious was even people in those so-called Stone Age time has this curiosity of the spiritual. See? That means they look to the heavens, they look to the unknowns. You know? Unlike us, 10,000 years has come and gone, but man has not fundamentally changed. We are still a spiritual being, is it? And that is to me fascinating, you know. It's fascinating for that matter. I'd like to offer you a truth as we close our time together, and I'd like to close this segment with my personal testimony as a worker and as a Christian. In all my life as a worker and after I became a Christian, I find the words in John chapter 10 verse 9-10 to be extremely meaningful to me. John chapter 9 verse 9 and 10 says this, I am the door, Jesus said. If anyone enters through me, he will be safe and will go in and come out and find pasture. And verse 10, Jesus says, a thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. But I came that you may have life and have it abundantly or meaningfully. Right? And to me, this is what defines me as a worker, as a Christian, as a husband, and as a father. That everything that I do and every work that I have, there will be down moments. But I find it meaningful because this God that I have has welcomed me and asked me to come and work with Him alongside and to grant me this meaningful life. You see, right? Work will be work. The world will change, but I know for sure that I have a God, and this God has promised me a meaningful life which will last. Right? Any thoughts before I do my last wrap up for that matter?
We have been created as human beings, and we often try to then identify ourselves as human doings. And I think that's the biggest tragedy we have, because the Lord created us wonderfully, as you've put it, and we were created to really flourish. And so the question of flourishing, what does it really mean? Is it the money? Is it the wealth? Is it the status? What does flourishing mean? Because the day we die, all this we cannot take with us. And on our tombstone, we can't have there, here lies the best accountant in Singapore. And most of us yearn for the relationships that we have grown up with, and for some of us, you know, we leave behind. And that seems to be the foremost, you know, sense of importance for us when we live before we, you know, breathe our last breath. And so the question is then, is that what life is about? And what are we doing now, you know, wasting our time on this earth?
I really like your thought pattern about, in the sense that we should be looking at our being rather than replacing our being with doing. Replacing of who we are by the works of our hands, you know, and letting the works of our hands define who we are. You know.
Yep. Sharing, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I had this just experience that I had that, in Singapore context, right? A lot of things that you do, they ask you how's your work, what's the progress, if your project failed, what's the next step, what's your plan B, right? So I think we are kind of ingrained in part of this society, but I think there's one day somebody that asked me the first question is about how's your project. He said, how are you? And I was like, whoa, that's so refreshing. The first thing they care about is me. The project failed, I don't feel well, but nobody care about how I feel. It's what's the next step? But that question, that kind of fundamentally summarizes that we are a human, we are a being instead of a doing.
And it takes a lot of effort and discipline for us to move away from this doing to being, right? All of us are creatures of habits, First thing we shake our hands with other people is we will find out what is your role, what's your title, We give our people, what do you do, Or we give a name card to our people where all our alphabets are there, all our titles are there, But you see, we hide behind this as a form of security. And maybe we need to rethink through this, particularly in a world that is technologically changing, Don't forget, a machine can have more titles and do many more things than we do, So how?
So I'm just thinking even what is the implication of, putting two and two together from technological advances plus fundamentally our view of what human is will drive how we go to work and will drive how we exercise leadership in whatever various spheres of influence. I really like the paradigm between, humans are both creators and destroyers. We have such a great propensity to be able to do great good, but at the same time, we know all of us, we fundamentally can create great havoc if we choose to. So when we talk about John 10:9-11, it says, it ends with, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I've come that they may have life and have it abundantly. It seems to have such a different paradigm. Regardless of where we are, whether we can influence technological advancement, but we can actually choose either you want to steal, you want to destroy, or do you want to, give life, so to speak, and to, give life abundantly, so to speak. And I think that is a real challenge to leadership. That, for leaders who are in some positions of influence with such rapid advancement, you can choose, okay, my priority is bottom line, human is secondary. But if the mindset is human is first, human flourishing takes precedence, and then how do we subjugate technological advancement to be a servant rather than to be a bad master? Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I will use this platform to wrap up our time together. I think you are absolutely correct in the sense that as a leader, this is where we are given the opportunity to bring out the very best of humanity. And how do we do that? By being able to care for our people that we have put charge over. We can treat them like machines. Alternatively, we can bring forth the best of the humanity through our kindness, right? Through our compassion, through our ability to provide them with economic well-being, for that matter. I think the leader has even the greater opportunity and responsibility to act in a much more humane manner to restore humanity. And using the same verse in John 10:10 as it is, if we're not careful, technology can become the very thief that will rob us, that will make us much worse off, you see. But a good leader is one who need to know who are the robbers, who are the thieves, and then to restore the balance by being the protector, by being someone who can make life in a meaningful manner. After all that's been said and done, I'd like to believe that the development in a technologically driven world must force us as individuals to ask the question, what is life? What is life? The world will change very fast, but we need to pause and bring ourselves out and say, what is life? Who am I? What am I supposed to be doing here? And it will also allow us to appreciate life to its fullness. I think technology is great because you see, remember in the Henry Ford case, you see, it frees us men actually to do things that we cannot do normally, right? If I don't have, for example, a vacuum cleaner, it will take me a much longer time to sweep the floor, But with a vacuum cleaner, it frees me of those time. But what do I do with the rest of the time? This becomes a great question. I would like to suggest that the rest of the time is for us to appreciate life to its fullness. And I'd like to give you all this as a passing thought. Work, spirituality, and the notion of a good life will become much more important and urgent. as we journey onwards, you see what I mean? Right? They'll become much, much more important. And I'd like to finish off our time by giving you one more Bible verse. My favorite verse, Proverbs chapter 9, verse 7. Go then, eat your bread in happiness, and drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for God has already approved your works. Let me read one more time. Go then, eat your bread in happiness, drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for God has already approved your work.
Wonderful.
We then must be stewards of the time that the technology has given us to actually be able to sit and to eat our bread and drink our wine and enjoy it. Most of the time we don't, you know, so like you said, let's bring back humanity.
Yeah. That is a wonderful segue into the lunch that is going to come after this, and we'll continue our conversation. But really, really thank you for all your deep thoughts. Really, it was really stimulating for me, and I'm sure I speak for all the rest of us. And apart from that, let's continue our conversation over lunch.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you.